I actually am kind of surprised that it's rotten. I thought it was going to be on the fresh side, just on the lower end of the fresh side, like maybe like 70, 60, 48%, which I do not agree with.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the RT Aftershow. Quantumania is upon us. Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has kicked off with two of the mightiest, tiniest heroes, AntMan and the Wasp, in the new film Quantumania. We are here today to talk everything that we saw in the movie. It's a spoiler-heavy after show, as it always is around here, so if you've not yet seen the movie, make sure you go check it out, get your tickets, come on back, and join us when you're ready to be spoiled with everything that you saw in the movie, what we think could happen in the future of the MCU, and everything else in between.
You may not want her to watch this.
We had a deal.
My name is Mark Ellis, and joining me today is one of my dear friends, an incredible movie reviewer on her own YouTube channel, The Movie Couple. You can also follow her on social media. It's Wendy Lee Szany. Welcome to the After Show.
I kind of want like an applause sign in the studio audience. Like I'll do my own. I'm so excited to be here to talk about AntMan and the Wasp Quantumania, so thank you for having me and doing this like face-to-face in person, which it's great.
It's so much fun because we're going to do a deep dive on the details and answer some of the burning questions that the movie left for us, as these MCU movies tend to do. And so I just want to kick off with a very simple, general, what did you think of this movie that seems to have a lot of audiences divided?
I thought it was a lot of fun, though there is a lot going on, and they really used that like 2 hour and 5 minutes, I think, to its fullest potential, and to the point where I feel like there is a lot to take in, but yet at the same time I felt there could have been more to be told. So I felt like some parts of the movie, like I thought Act 1, really a lot of fun. Act 2, I felt we were kind of in like a back and forth situation, and then we ramp it up with Act 3. So overall, lots of fun.
It's Lang versus Kang, and there's a lot of Langs, and the Kangs, well, there's actually a lot of Kangs, too, that we find out in a post-credit scene. So before we get to all that, I'll just let you all know the tomato meter right now, scoreboard says it's the second rotten film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just 1 percentage point ahead of the low bar for the MCU, at least in terms of tomato meter, which is the Eternals at 47%. This is 48%, but the audience score, which is verified, this is every audience member that actually paid to see the movie, they say 84%, so they're making it super fresh here. And the critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes currently reads, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania mostly lacks the spark of fun that elevated earlier adventures, but Jonathan Majors' Kang is a thrilling villain poised to alter the course of the MCU. So we talk about the tomato meter score, and we say, oh, it's the second MCU movie ever to be rotten. What's going on here? What went wrong?
48%, which I do not agree with. I thought when I saw the movie and I walked out of the theater, I thought, okay, I actually am kind of surprised that it's rotten. I thought it was going to be on the fresh side, just on the lower end of the fresh side, like maybe like 70, 60s, exactly.
Thor: Love and Thunder, 64%. And by the way, Thor: Love and Thunder,
it was going to be
it's the third lowest. So 64% to 48 and 47. That's a huge drop.
Yeah.
Why is it so low, do you think, with the critics, but it rebounded so well with the audiences?
I think for the audience, when they go in, they're fans, and they're not saying critics aren't fans of Marvel stuff. Okay, let's just put that on the table.
Sure, the Venn diagram overlaps pretty heavily.
It overlaps. Like, you can be a critic and you can be a fan of like all the MCU and the comic book movies, right? But I think for a lot of the fans, they go in looking for a good time. They're excited to see the first movie of Phase 5. And I think a lot of them go into this, they love Ant-Man. This is first and foremost another Ant-Man movie. It's not a Kang movie, it's an Ant-Man movie, right? So I think they went in, they're like, we're excited to see Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. We're gonna see more of the Ant family. We're gonna get to see the quantum realm. And all of that is a lot of fun put together. There's a lot of comedy in there that kind of is very similar to Ant-Man 1 and 2. So it's not so different from its predecessors at all. And I feel like with the critics, we look at movies in a slightly different way, in a critical way, where you're looking at not just like the pacing and you're having fun, but you're also looking at script writing, performance, CGI, all of that, and you're kind of trying to wrap your head around that.
Sure. And
so I think that's where the big divide is.
Yeah, and this movie also, I mean, I think that audiences are receptive. Like you said, they're also very excited, but they're looking for these individual things that, like, you want to see what sort of a presence Kang is going to be as possibly the next big MCU baddie. You also want to see how they're going to close out this trilogy. Because I think a lot of audience members see themselves in at least a member of the Wang family, primarily Scott Lang, or, you know, if you have Ant-Man and you have the Wasp, it's like, oh, I can shrink myself and still be a superhero. I just think that's a cool, relatable sort of premise, even if we will probably never get to venture into a quantum realm in our lifetime. That was the other thing that I took from this movie that I really enjoyed, was getting to just live in that tiny, tiny quark-filled world for the better part of the runtime. I mean, it felt like if the Star Wars Cantina was just like one stop in the mall, this felt like the whole town. I mean, everything, you have all these different weird creatures and friends and allies and enemies going on. So that was just kind of a new place that I thought the film did well in inundating us real quick as to how this world works, what's going on. There's a struggle, there's a rebellion against the premise, and I think a lot of people are looking at this movie as feeling very Star Wars-y, which, as a huge Star Wars fan myself, that's not necessarily a bad thing for me.
I agree with that. I don't think it's a bad thing either, because this is the first time we've ever gotten to see the quantum realm. And I think ever since Ant-Man 1, we've been very curious about, like, what is that going to look like? Because all you see them is shrinking down, but you never got to be in it. Janet didn't want to talk about it ever. So, we only got her back in the second movie. But, so you're curious. You're like, how is this world? And I think in all of our heads, because of how little we know, none of us knew it was going to be so full of life and, like, citizens, like quantum people, like Cassie said. So that introduction had to come very fast, because you're not dealing with just, like, the first movie. Okay, great, Ant-Man, Hank Pym, Scott Lang. Second movie, okay, Scott Lang, Hope, Pym, right? And Ghost. And then now this one, we've multiplied. Now we've got 5 family members, plus the quantum people, plus Kang, plus Modoc. And I think that's where it felt a little congested, and they needed to have the explanation of, like, how this world is going to look and live, and the citizen in it, and why are there rebellion fighters. And it was so much cramped into that second act.
There's a lot.
That I was just like, wait, hold on. Like, I need more sort of why the quantum people are fighting. Why does this Janet name, when you said it, when she, heard, when Jentora heard, and she's like, Janet, and I was like, oh, like, I wanted more history of that, and I still wonder now, like, what could they have swapped out to give us a more fulfilling, more full story?
I think one of the big story points in here that hit home with a lot of critics and audiences was that interaction between Janet and Kang that we're sort of flashing back to.
Which I love.
It's what the movie opens, and I think a lot of people responded to that because we're getting to see a sympathetic version of this villain, or at least that's the person that he's putting forth to Janet, where you're like, oh no, this poor guy, we're all just stuck in this quantum realm. How's he going to get out to get back to his people? And now we find out that time, it's not really important or relevant. Kang is not a guy that worries about being anywhere on time, because time is just this little thing to him.
Yeah.
But that's also where he's in the quantum realm and he doesn't have full use of his powers. And so the Kang aspect of this, we might have gone in thinking this is going to be like a fun family adventure and another Ant-Man romp. We walked out saying, okay, whatever you think about the movie, Jonathan Majors' performance as this Kang, as many Kangs, was the star of the movie.
Absolutely. I think ever since I saw him in Lovecraft Country, I was like, oh, this man, I can't wait to see him in more things. And he's gone on to, Creed 3's coming out, Devotion's out, he is Kang. So we already saw a sneak peek of what potentially Kang could be in Loki season 1 when he played He Who Remains. So I've been very excited for him to get to play Kang the Conqueror. And like, so far we haven't really gotten to see him as a villain, Jonathan Majors.
Sure.
It's mostly been hero. So I've been really excited. Even like He Who Remains, it's like, yes, villain, but at the same time, it kind of like toes on that line of like, yes, but not really. But Kang the Conqueror is intimidating and threatening. And you got a real good taste of like what he could do with a snap of his fingers, literally.
And again, this is the Kang that so the post-credit scene is we just see a bunch of Kangs and they're all ready to go, to battle. They're like, oh, the one that got away, sort of, the one rogue Kang was the one that we were focusing on in this movie. And so while they look at him as being very strong, I think that he was weakened by his powers being in the quantum realm. So maybe that's an explanation that for, I think, a plot point that a lot of fans have an issue with, which is, okay, wait, so this guy's Kang the Conqueror, and they're setting up the next 3 or 4 years of this MCU to be the Kang dynasty, and the dude just got felled by ants? Like, what are we looking at here? Do you see that as being just a reflection of him being weaker, or was that just something that you felt the movie didn't really handle all that well, was how this Kang got defeated?
I don't necessarily feel like he is weaker. I felt like it may have to do with the way they wrote that, where he's supposed to be this super threatening being, and sure, he may not be in his full power, full Kang in the quantum realm, but regardless, he is still Kang going up against AntMan. And he already said, he's like, oh, you're an Avenger, I've killed one before, which one are you, the one with the hammer? So you know he's run in to Thor.
He's seen this, he's seen people like this many times,
Yes.
and usually comes out on top.
Yeah, so he's not even a little bit fazed by that. Like, he was just so stoic and blank when he heard the Avengers, where Scott said like a threat, you know, to intimidate, and he's like, I don't even care. So at the end, when he was sort of, granted, it took a whole group effort of the entire quantum people, Ant-Man plus the Wasp.
It was a family effort and a rebellion.
Yes.
But I think that people look at Ant-Man and this being the third movie and saying, okay, look, we've seen a lot of great trilogies before. You got to off somebody. I was kind of like emotionally prepared to lose either Michael Douglas or Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm like, oh, not Hank or Janet, but like maybe one of them goes. We can't, God forbid anything happens to Cassie.
Right.
It's not going to be Ant-Man, is it? It's not going to be Wasp, is it? And it ended up being, no, everybody's okay.
Everybody's okay, which
Is that kind of a downer? I mean it's an upper because like everybody survived, but
Yes.
I think sometimes people look for that emotional, like that pull. You know, that Force Awakens Han Solo,
The
oh my God,
sacrifice.
we lost him. Is that something that was missing from here? Did it need to be in there? Like did the stakes need to feel higher? And maybe that being the result of a family member dying?
I think for me specifically, I think I was looking for a little bit of that loss to serve as a motivation to move forward, regardless of who it was that was going to potentially face a hero's death.
Sure, and could also be Kang showing
Correct.
his lack of sympathy and more of a display of his
Yes.
powers. And he fights Ant-Man.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go out the way that I think a lot of Vegas prognosticators would have bet that Ant-Man is able to defeat Kang. Again, with the help of an army of ants and a rebellion going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. And look, when in the trailer, I think this is where like the idea was kind of born in my head, so in my own headcanon, I thought maybe we're going to see a hero's death was because I don't have to win. We just both have to lose. And I love that line.
Great line.
And so this is a man who has lost a lot of time with his daughter. And has it all back right now, like feeling he's wrote a book, he's on a podcast, it's great. And to sacrifice it all to save the family and the rest of his people and whatnot. And I really thought we were going to be able to see the sacrifice. That so when we move forward to the next chapter and when we loop back around to Kang again, it's going to give Hope and Cassie and Hank and Janet more of that, and even the quantum people, like more motivation to be like, we got to band together and defeat this guy. So for it to not happen, again, this is my own fault for thinking this way. I literally built my own headcanon. I was like, oh, this going to happen.
Well, we've been trained as audience members for, you know, the decades we've been going to the movies where it's like you just kind of, you feel a little different in your body and you're eating that popcorn a little faster because you're just so anticipating and concerned about somebody you've been going to see at the movies for years not making it out of a film alive. We didn't get that here yet, anyway. But, I mean, Phase 5, it ain't going to work out well for everyone.
Yeah.
And so we have Kang presented as this big baddie. And we'll get into the post-credit scenes in just a little bit. But there was another, you know, nemesis in this film. And it was a nemesis from way back in Ant-Man's past. And now it seems like this nemesis has become somewhat divisive when the fans react to seeing Modoc, this version of Modoc anyway, which is actually, lo and behold, Corey Stoll playing Darren, the bad guy from the first Ant-Man. Now he's back in this very weird square form where he feels like just the ultimate weapon of death, but inside, maybe there is a little bit of humanity left.
Okay, so on paper, when I saw it in the trailer, it was revealed, the big floating face, which I didn't even catch on the first watch through in the trailer. So on the second watch, I was like, wait, whose face is that? And it actually took a second because they took Corey's face and they kind of had to stretch it a certain way.
Oh, if you just showed that picture to me, I would not have been able to tell you that's Corey's
It's worse
skull.
than a DMV photo.
Yeah.
So, and I went, oh, this is the angle they're going to approach Modoc. And I took a step back and I went, yeah, that can be kind of cool, to kind of a full circle moment for Darren back into Ant-Man 1 to loop all 3 movies together. Like, it's not really the Modoc that like I have heard about and I have like watched and read about. But sure, like let's see how it was. And I felt like they got a lot of the personalities, and I thought the look of Modoc with the thingy on,
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. I actually liked it, but it was when they flipped to Darren's face that it took me out a little bit. I have like a love-hate with this version of Modoc because there's so many funny moments with him.
Right, and it felt like that's why Modoc was in this movie, less to be that weapon of death and more just to get some chuckles that the MCU is known for, because it's going to be less laughs once we get into the quantum realm with the Lang family, because they're just trying to figure out what's up and what's down. This rebellion, not a lot of chuckles happening there. We get a scene with Bill Murray intimating that maybe some stuff between him and Michelle Pfeiffer went down in the quantum realm in years past, but that's really it. And then Modoc shows up, so I appreciated just the laughs and the lightness that we got in contrast to all of the real hard-scrabble stuff that Kang is spouting and that this rebellion's going through. But I can see where people were let down by it not being, quote, their Modoc. So what's the version of Modoc that you would want to have seen in Ant-Man?
I wanted the ones from the comics. Like, I don't have a deep dive on Modoc. Like, when I did talk to Sheb about it, he would explain to me.
Yeah.
He loved Modoc.
Yeah.
He had all these Modoc things. He always sent me pictures.
Our great pal John Schnepp, the best, the sweatiest.
The best. So I was kind of, and plus there's the Hulu series, Modoc. So I was kind of expecting something similar to that version. So when they kind of like switched the angle to make it be Darren, like on paper, again, I thought it was great, but I felt like the personality was so off. And now we know that Modoc didn't make it out of the quantum realm. In my head, I'm like, oh, so are we going to be able to get another one? Because I feel like they're going to bring AIM into the equation. So, but I don't know. Like, I mean, this is the beginning of Phase 5. I'm going to let Marvel do its thing and figure it out, because now we have movies and TV shows. So there's a lot of different ways to introduce. I don't know if we're going to get another Modoc, but,
There's a lot of
maybe.
ways to introduce new characters or
Yes.
characters from a different realm. And, I mean, I think that the thing that I really appreciated about this movie was that it felt like we hit a soft reset of where we were in Phase 4. Because just me personally, I felt like I loved the first 3 phases of the MCU, and then Phase 4 felt like, okay, I just had a great party in Vegas, and then Phase 4 is me waking up the next day and being like, all right, let me just get my bearings here, and I'm not really following what the hell's the multiverse about. I think we really came together at the end with Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, but I was a little done with using the multiverse as just a way to get some famous characters and some cool cameos. So I appreciated going from that into the quantum realm. Now, the two can go hand in hand a little bit, like when Kang is saying, I've met people like you before, I've killed many Avengers in other realms. But just being in the quantum realm, I feel like this is cool. This is much more fun, for me anyway, and it feels much more meaningful
more
than just
contained.
being in another multiverse where if these events don't work out the way we hope, well, we still have our normal planet Earth that we can just always go back to. And one of the real selling points of the film walking out for me was that family dynamic between the Langs, and particularly between Scott and his daughter. Then you got Grandma and Grandpa are kicking some ass too. So it was a real family affair, and I think that's why a lot of audiences are giving it such a high rating.
I agree with that. It's first and foremost an Ant-Man 3 movie, which, like, again, I've touched on this already. Like, I, in my head, fell to victim to my own headcanon, and I was like, this is going to be like Infinity War Endgame. Like, I really thought it, and not halfway through, it was way earlier than that. But I was like, you got to remember this is an Ant-Man 3
Once
movie.
you saw Scott back at Baskin Robbins, you're like,
exactly.
oh, we might not get everything in this one movie.
Ant-Man, yeah. So that was kind of my own fault for it. I just got too excited about the premise of Kang and not realizing, but not at the same time, that we can't go full out in the first movie of Phase 5. We got to build up to it. Like, that's not how Thanos was done. Like, how many times did we see Thanos in post-credit scenes and teased before we finally got that? So we got to build it all back up. So I feel like with Phase 4, it served as like, here are some new Avengers to pay attention to, Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Here is like the next phrase for where Thor is in his life. And we also have a couple of Disney Plus shows, Miss Marvel, and etc., to kind of loop it all in together. This is all setting it up for when we get to the end of Phase 5, where we're going to be, and then, all of Phase 6.
And you use the word setup movie, and I think that's just, it gets a knee-jerk reaction from a lot of people. But
Sure.
I always tell folks, like you know what you're buying a ticket to. You buy a ticket to a movie called Cocaine Bear, guess what? Probably going to see a bear do a lot of blow, all right? You buy a ticket to Creed 3, you're going to see 2 guys in a ring punching each other a lot.
Right.
Know what you're buying a ticket to. So with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, by this point, they're over 30 movies deep, and they have plans for at least 40 movies. You know that these films are going to set each other up. Like, I remember leaving a Maze Runner movie back in the day and feeling like I just wasted 2 hours. Not because the movie was terrible, but because the end just felt like, oh, it's like come back next year, because then the action really starts to ramp up. And it's like, that was a whole setup movie. I didn't need that.
Yeah.
But with this, you see the post-credit scene. And you see all the Kangs. And they're talking like, oh, yeah, the one just lost. Whatever. We're a bunch of Kangs. We can take on anybody.
Yeah.
Did it feel empty to you, the movie you just saw, because now we have that reveal? Because for me, I was like, that's what this movie was supposed to do. It was just supposed to set us up, give us a little taste of how a Kang operates, and then show us the full might of this Kang army. So I left the theater really excited for the future with that post-credit scene. What was your take on that one, and also the one that was just buried way down at the end, where we got to see Loki, and we got to see Owen Wilson in the audience watching Kang on stage?
So the first one I was really excited for, because I think a lot of fans were speculating, are we going to get to see the Council of Kang?
Yeah.
And we sure do at the end. And it's just like very impressive at all the costumes and the different looks and the designs of Kang. And then you also realize this, like, how are they, with all the Avengers, young, original, whoever, how are they going to be able to beat this Council of Kang?
I don't know.
You take care of one.
Yeah.
And there's another one.
It's like
and there's another
Whack-A-Kang.
one.
They just keep popping up, and it's like you kill one, and then you have a whole council.
Right.
Like, I remember seeing Thanos in post-credit scenes and being like, this is going to be a tough
It's
one.
like, I don't want to be in your position. So yeah, it's going to be insane, which is why I really did enjoy that post-credit scene. Plus, it was literally just out of like the panel of the comic book. It was almost identical. So I enjoyed seeing that. And then the deep one, way past the credits, it's like a nice little stinger for Loki season 2. Very excited, because we already know that him and Sylvie got to meet Kang, he who shall remain, he who remains. And now he is trying to be like, I got to get back to like my timeline. Nobody here knows me. Morbius is like, who are you? It's really different. So they're on the search of this new guy, and we get to see Victor Timely, which I don't know much about. But what I remember at both times that I saw Ant-Man 3 was the cheer from the crowd. And they were so loud that I literally could not hear what Tom Hiddleston was saying. And I was like, what did he say? So I think it's like, are you sure this is the guy? Yeah, that's the guy, I'm sure. And it's just another fun way to see what iteration of Kang we're going to get and how different they all look and what kind of motivation this Kang is going to have.
As hearing you explain it like you just did was eye-opening for me, because I'm starting to think of these movies as just giant trailers. And I don't mean that to slight them,
right.
But I think that's why you see such a discrepancy between the tomato meter and the verified audience score, is like, we see a movie trailer. There's a reason why movie trailers aren't reviewed, because it's like, we react to them. It's like, oh, that was awesome, I can't wait to see that. I think a lot of fans like you and me, we see a full movie, but we're like, ooh, that's going to be something going forward. And oh, did you see that nugget? That's going to come back, and we got all these Kangs. What does that mean for the dynasty going forward? Where I think if you're watching it just with the critical eye, you're like, okay, that's all well and good. What was the movie that I just watched?
Right.
And that was Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, family adventure, cool villainous presence, some laughs, maybe too many, or maybe characters misused for laugh purposes in some people's eyes. But when you look at just Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, it's a very hard, I'm just going to say Ant-Man 3. When you look at Ant-Man 3, just as that, and you're not really looking too far to the future and what this movie is setting up, it still had a job to do as a film on its own. Where do you think it ranks in the pantheon of MCU films? Is this going to be in your top half or closer to your bottom half?
To rank this movie, that's going to be hard. It's not my favorite Marvel movie. So if I were to like just split it half and half, not any placement, top or bottom, I would put it on the second half. Like, I had fun with it, and I understand the purpose it serves. I was more entertained by other Marvel titles.
What are you most excited about going forward then? So if we look at this movie, and I think we will look back on this movie as maybe not a misfire, but a stepping stone to something really, really cool. I mean, and there's a lot of titles that Marvel introduced at last year's Comic-Con where we're like, oh my God, look at this slate. This looks amazing. Just leading up to movies called the Kang Dynasty. I mean, before we even get that, we get new Captain America, get a Blade. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to look forward to. What are you most excited about in Phase 5 going forward?
Well, obviously, more of the Kang, right? I've been saying this for years, and I just don't know when we're going to get it. I don't think we're getting it until Phase 6, but Fantastic Four, X-Men.
Yeah, I see a lot of comments saying, where's Dr. Doom? Why can't we get Dr. Doom in this thing yet?
You got to give it time.
Okay.
You can't just jump in like that. That's why this first Kang, like, people are like, oh, he was defeated. It's like, well, you can't give the big bad like a home run out the. I'm not saying it. They should always be defeated, but there should be some sort of a build-up to a story.
And in fairness, it was a lot of ants.
It was a lot.
It was a crap ton of ants.
You know what I would love? I know that they built out Cassie to be stature, as we can tell already. So I'm excited for the premise of the Young Avengers. I love to see more of the Ant family. If they keep off like everybody in, I would not mind Janet and Hank like having suits.
Oh, wouldn't that be? I was so happy that they didn't die in this movie because I was prepared for it because again we've been trained as cinephiles to expect something like that coming, but with the backstory of Janet and her adventures in the quantum realm, I thought that was so, and the pain that she's been harboring back on Earth, thinking about all the guilt that she's been feeling. Like, she's like, we do not talk about this. You may want to know what your granddaughter's up to if you continue to withhold information because, man, are they messing with some stuff.
Yeah.
So communication, it's hard in families. And this isn't the most functional family we've ever seen. So I understand why maybe not everything was on the table, but seeing a future Lang really embrace that role of a hero and sort of reinvigorate her dad to don the suit and not just be an Avenger in name and with your history, but with actually continuing to be a superhero defending Earth and the known universe. I thought those storylines really played well in this movie.
Yeah, I felt like out of, aside from Janet and Kang, I really enjoy the interaction between Cassie and Scott. Like, they butted heads as you would with a teenage daughter.
Right.
But they also gave each other that room to kind of have like the conversation and figure each other out. And, you know, Scott's feeling guilty about losing all those years and Cassie's trying to just do her thing. So like, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, things came easily for her in the movie. And I actually don't agree with it. I felt like she had her fair amount of trial and error. You know?
Yeah, and she wasn't just like going to protest. She was like, she was taking classes. She was training. I mean, there's a bar to get over if you're a superhero. You got to put that stuff into practice at some point. So, Quantum Realm, you're getting thrown into the fire, but that's how you test gold.
I think another thing with Cassie, I would have, and this kind of brings back Modoc into the picture, when she delivers the "Don't be a dick" line, which got so many laughs from the fan screening I went to, and I get it's a funny line like "Don't be a dick," and I feel like because of the history Darren and Cassie has years ago when he like attacked her in their bedroom, that could have built out a nice conversation between the two of them. So that final line of like "Don't be a dick," that would have really hit home for him. Be like, okay, because they have that history and all that time that she, you know, was spending basically being captured, could have had like a little bit of conversation with Modoc, because I feel like the Modoc struggle was like, I'm no longer Darren. I don't have a sense of myself. I am just Modoc. But where I feel like deep down, she could have been that thread of connection to be like, you can still be Darren, even though you're in this form.
Right, and I did like that they mentioned that, you know, she was just a little girl when the events of the first AntMan happened, and like, you're never going to be a normal family if something like that happens to you. And so this is the path that was sort of predetermined for me because I didn't have a chance. I was too young to do anything about it. Here we are, and we have a new ass kicker in the MCU courtesy of it. So as a whole, you seem like you're maybe not thrilled with this movie necessarily. You liked it, but so you'll give it a fresh rating, but it's not one of your favorite in the MCU. But you seem pretty positive on where this whole thing is going as we careen towards 33 and 34 and 35 movies.
I feel like Marvel has put out so many great titles, and even if you take a look at some of the titles before Endgame, before Infinity War, like, not all of them are home run, and that's okay. And I feel like this is kind of where we are, because we got to the end of Endgame, and that was a close of the first chapter, or that very long first chapter.
Long chapter, yeah.
Very long chapter. And so we can't just go ham for every single movie for it to have that level, that Endgame level, without creating arcs for these characters, building out their story, introducing. There's like a lot to do. And so I am going to be patient. I'm going to stick with Marvel because I have a good time watching their shows and I have a good time watching their movies.
And like you referenced the shows, a lot of fertile soil there to grow, future heroes, villains, and also story points. So you would recommend, and I think I would too, like if you really want to keep up with where the MCU is going in the films, stick close to the TV shows as well. Like they're starting to go more hand in hand.
Yeah, they're starting to. I mean, if anything, like with especially I think Miss Marvel, how that's really going to be a really nice precursor to watch before you watch the Marvels, and then we can kind of go all the way back to WandaVision because we get to see Monica in that as well. So there's, so for people who have time, if you want to dive into, I think Loki is going to be a super important watch, but I think most people have watched it, the Marvels. So Miss Marvel to watch. And yeah, I just like, and even Moon Knight, like I'm curious as to, because he's such a cool character, do we get that but on film? That'd be great.
Right. And you mentioned if you have the time to watch the shows. I know it's a lot of content to check out, but time isn't anything that Kang or myself is really concerned about, because back when I was a kid, you know what we had? Nothing but time. And we got like one comic book movie every 3 years. We're like, man, I hope Batman Forever's good. I hope Spawn is great, because we're not getting another one for a while. Now we get a new either show or movie, something, just about every week it feels like. So it's a lot of content. We are spoiled in today's day and age, but we can still find time to talk about this stuff and do a deep dive like what we do here on Aftershow. So hope you all got a lot out of that. And Wendy, thank you so much for your expertise and lending it to the studio here today, because Lord knows I need it to just disseminate everything that happened in the first 4 phases and now where we're looking to the future of Phase 5. Where can everybody out there find you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation. You can find me everywhere on the social medias at Wendy Lee Szany or on YouTube at The Movie Couple.
And I know you're doing a lot of writing now too. You're just really a Swiss Army knife when it comes to movies, dissecting them, loving them, going to watch them, going to a lot of screenings and stuff. So thanks for putting in the effort. It makes all of us smarter for the process. And as far as stuff for here at Rotten Tomatoes, we love doing the after show. It's always spoiler heavy. See the movie. Come on, join us here at the after show. And RottenTomatoes.com. That's where you can go to get a little look into all the TV and movies that the MCU and its future hold for you. Me, I'm Mark Ellis. You can find me on social media at Mark Ellis Live, stand-up tour dates at markellis.live, and we will see you next time right here on the RT After Show.